So here to talk through this LITS puzzle I wrote called pentominoes for the 12 pentomino shapes all fit into the grid and the rest of the white space. They're not pentominoes, they're larger than them, but they work together to form a valid LITS puzzle. We can start with all those pentominoes being good places to begin because 4 of the 5 cells in them will be marked, and so in some cases we have central cells that always must be used or we're not going to be able to form a valid shape. For instance, these three in the Z shape, these 3 in the U, and we'll never be able to take this because we'll always form a 2 by 2 box. These 2 in the Y, these 3 in the N. We're now touching to this X pentomino that we'll always use a center cell and can only use one of these 2 now with this cell also marked down here, so we can mark this off. The W is going to be shading into an S tetromino eventually, so either this S or that S, and the V in the upper left is going to be an L in either of its modes. And that's where I'm going to maybe stop talking about the pentomino letters and start talking about the tetromino letters exclusively to help out here. But I think the star of the puzzle that I was intending was through this top white region that's pretty marked off at this moment. It's already forcing some cancellations around it. And it's in a case where it can become an S. Notice that if it became this S, it's touching an S down below, so that doesn't look good. So it's going to be an L instead. That L can't touch an L from this upper left corner, so this has to come here. And notice the first connectivity constraint is we have to come through the cell, or the LITS is in one group. And in coming through that cell, we have an L or an I choice. This has to be an I to keep things separate. 2 by 2 rule and keeping things connected marks those in. This Y pentomino here can be one or the other of these cells, always taking this cell. This is now an I with an I, so this has to be an L. In this lower left region, we can't cross over these gaps, so there aren't enough cells to be on the left here. We'll have to come through this channel. In coming through this channel, we don't want to form an L shape, so we'll have to take this cell, so it can be a T or an S. That marks off this cell, completes this cage as an L. That marks off this cell for 2 by 2 rule, puts in this T, this L. This L is touching to this shape that can be an L or an S, so this is canceled here. This must be an S, forces this T, puts this into the grid. We're now in a case that for this Z shape, we've got sort of incompatibility with shading this cell. Shading these cells would put too many into the grid. As a 2 by 2 square, we could try to form this L shape, but now we're running into collisions up here. So we effectively cancel all of this region except for this bit that remains at the top. And so this is a moment in the puzzle we can mark that conclusively in as an S. Put under an I, this S is touching to this P shape, so for it to not be another S, it's got to take this cell. And now I've got to zoom out and think about connectivity, and the connectivity path that's critical is going to be seeing that along this set of shaded cells, we don't have the grid connected yet. So we've got a lower right region, but it's not yet connecting this top region. So how's it going to do that? Well, it can't come through this cell because that's going to be invalid. So it's got to come through the top here. We've got to connect to this shape with what's coming down below. So that forces this L, puts in this T, marks all this off, and the last cell here makes one connected shape for the whole puzzle. So good Tuesday challenge. Basic LITS steps. The pentomino regions are fairly small, so they give a lot of shaded cells at the start, but we still have to think about how to keep them connected and also obey all the LITS rules, including not having 2 tetrominoes of the same type touching. So hopefully you enjoyed this theme and enjoyed this video. We'll see you again soon.